Hi, welcome back to my channel. Today I thought I'd talk about my high school and college years and how it was being a student with a disability. My high school years were pretty average. I went to a lot of extracurricular activities. My dad was a coach and my sister participated in a lot of activities, so I tagged along with them. My dad would take me on the bus with him, and that's how I attended away games. I could walk independently back then, so I just walked on the bus and rode the bus like any other kid. Nowadays, I couldn't do that because I can't walk, but back then I could walk, so I was able to do it. Looking back, I realized just how lucky I was to be able to do this. I know a lot of people with my level of disabilities don't ever get this chance, but I was fortunate enough to be able to walk independently, and I was fortunate enough to have a dad as a coach. I had a group of friends and we would hang out a lot. I come from a town of less than 1,500 people, so there wasn't a lot to do. So most of the time we ended up driving around in someone's car. When my friends got their license, I was so naive that at one point I thought I would be able to drive. Yeah, looking back, I can't believe I ever thought this was a possibility. But driving was the first thing I ever encountered where my peers were able to do it and I couldn't. And I was a little naive in thinking I could keep up with my peers. To my mom and dad's credit, they let me try for my driver's license. Thinking back, I realized just how scary this must have been to allow their disabled daughter to drive a car, but they never discouraged me or even had anything to say. I also credit my high school teacher because he never discouraged me or made a big deal about me driving. I took driver's ed, but I failed the driving portion of the test. Looking back, there was no way I would pass. naive. I remember one of my classmates said, "Wow, Chelsea's going to be a really good driver when she gets older because she has an electric wheelchair to practice on." He said this the day I got my electric wheelchair. With driving an electric wheelchair and driving the car, they're totally different experiences. But hey, we were kids and we were naive. Not everything about high school was perfect, though. In high school, my 20-year battle with depression really started. I can't pinpoint a reason. It would be easy to say I was depressed because I had a disability, but I honestly don't remember ever thinking in those terms. I never thought, "Oh, I can't do this." I just remember being sad a lot. I just think I had a genetic predisposition, and being the only one with a physical disability in my entire town probably didn't help the situation. I was okay academically. I wasn't a bad student, but I wasn't a great student. Nothing like I would become in college. In my school, like most schools, there was a college track and the non-college track. From day one, my freshman year, I was on the college track. I didn't even consider anything different. When I went to college, I had a friend who told me his school didn't allow him to go on the college track. They said because he had a disability, he didn't need to go to college. At that time, when he told me that, I was shocked that a school would do that. But as time has gone on and I've gotten more exposure to the disabled community, I realized this isn't uncommon. Some schools are very stubborn about letting students with disabilities go on the college track, and that's just a shame. But I was lucky and my school was very open-minded and let me prepare for college. When I was preparing for the transition from high school to college, my special education teacher I did, because my experience in my life was pretty average and I didn't have a lot of problems related to my disability. I didn't see the need for disability awareness. Literally, at that time, I thought the Americans with Disabilities Act was the dumbest law ever written. Ah, yes, I was young and dumb. I went to a small Midwestern university that was built around the time of the Vietnam War. Because it was built around the time of the Vietnam War, the builders had returning soldiers in mind. And particularly, they had soldiers with disabilities in mind. So they made the campus very accessible for those returning soldiers. All the buildings are connected. People say they are connected by underground tunnels, but actually there is only one underground tunnel, but the rest of the buildings are connected by above ground walkways. It was really nice going to college there because once I entered the academic buildings, I never had to leave I never had to go outside. So that was pretty nice. Because the university is really accessible, there's a lot of wheelchairs on campus. A professor once told me there were over 100 wheelchairs on campus. And for a small Midwestern university, this would be quite a big proportion. I'm not sure there were that many wheelchairs, but there were a lot. I lived all 4 years in the wheelchair accessible dorm. In there, I was surrounded by other students with disabilities. I was surrounded by students with my disability, and I was surrounded by students with other types of disabilities. I began listening to their stories, and I realized my story wasn't, my experience wasn't at all what other people experience. So, as I like to say, this is where I got my unofficial education in disabilities. It was the best education I've ever had. It's because of this experience I began to open my mind to disability awareness awareness, and I began to become really interested in the topic. As I told you, in my senior year of high school, I didn't want anything to do with disability awareness. I turned up my nose to it. But through hearing other people's experiences, I became interested in disability awareness. And I had two professors who encouraged me to keep educating myself on disability issues because they felt I had the leadership qualities to become a leader in the disability community. So that's exactly what I did. I immersed myself in disability awareness and disability history. By the time I was a senior in college, I was president of the Access Club, a club on campus that dealt with assistive sorry. The Access Club, a club on campus that dealt with accessibility issues. I was also working in learning resources, an office on campus that helped students with disabilities. And I was applying to the top schools for disability studies to continue my graduation. I was reading disability history books as fast as I could. I could not get enough disability awareness and disability history. Oh, and I no longer thought the Americans with Disabilities Act was the dumbest law ever. I actually became an outspoken advocate about the need to comply with the ADA. Academically, I was hitting it out of the park. Remember I told you that I was just an okay student in high school? While in college, I became a great student. I think this was because in college, I could rest between classes, and that's what I did. I would come home and nap between classes. I think in high school I didn't have the ability to rest between classes. In high school, my high school guidance counselor suggested I do just that, but I told her no. I didn't think I needed any special accommodations. She was right looking back. I don't care. I still like telling people my GPA because it's something I'm proud of. I graduated with a 3.8 overall in my studies, and I was on the dean's list every semester. I thought I was headed for great things. Everyone thought I was headed for great things. I was acing all my classes, and I was applying to the top program in my field. I thought I was going to do great things. A professor even told me she could see me as the president of a national organization. Yup, man, I thought I was going to be hot shit. But nothing is ever perfect, is it? And while I seem to have the world in the palm of my hand, and that's what it felt like to me. It felt like the world was at my fingertips. I was suffering from that pesky depression. Not only was I experiencing depression, but it was also getting worse. Finally, in my junior year, I went to the university counseling center. Before then, I had always been hesitant to go to college, but I began to have panic attacks, and I didn't know what else to do. So I went to the university counseling center. Gradually, I became more comfortable with counseling. I'll never forget that one time my counselor gave me a questionnaire about depression. It was to see if you had depression and how severe it is. And I'll never forget the look of shock on the therapist's face when she saw my score. I had scored near the high end of the chart. That means I had severe depression. And she said, "Chelsea, do you realize that most people with your score are laying in bed and not going to class?" And here at this time, I was acing all my classes. I was the president of the Access Club, and I was in talks with the university about accessibility on campus. Not the picture of someone who's severely depressed. I don't know how I did it. I think it was just because I had depression for for so long that I just didn't know any different. And I just continue to persevere. I think I was determined to succeed. And I also think I had a supportive environment that allowed me to succeed. It just worked out with my depression. Well, that's all I have for today. Next time I'll talk about my graduate school years, and we'll see how depression always comes to bite you in the ass. But for right now, I'll let you go. If you made it this far, I sincerely thank you. If you like this content, you know what to do. Anyway, have a good day and goodbye.